Alright, it's kind of a subject I wanted to get to eventually, but the modern mystic has been yammering a little on the subject around it anyway, so I figure I'll get to it now. Might be a good time while others are talking about it. It's this whole idea of our mental disposition or mood, and the fact that, connected to that is this idea that, there is a great deal of pollution between our psychology and our philosophy, or how we're thinking. We can't control all of that. I mean, ideally it should be all from the top down, but yeah, some of the bottom-ups crap happens. We're distracted, and we're disposed by circumstances, and that changes the way we will perceive, the way we will think, the way we will calculate. It'll get a bit perverted by that disposition that's created. Alright, so anyway, Nick has been talking, about pain and about the fact that people can manipulate what they feel. How the sensations or the events are ultimately registered in their brain, and that's what we're talking about. I mean, whether it's we seeing something or whether we're actually feeling it through our arms, the end result happens inside the brain itself. It doesn't happen externally. It doesn't happen at the end of my hand. It happens in my head. But I totally disagree. I don't like the way he's framing it, because the sensations, the rawest of them, the crudest of them, are happening in a real lizard type of brain, a real primitive brain, a brain that's been around a long time. Raw sensations of discomfort, pain, are really hard to disconnect. I mean, you could be the greatest monk on earth, and if I start sticking a nail through your head, you're gonna wince. You're gonna react. You're not gonna be able to just fold that away into some sort of rationalization. You're not gonna be able to take your brain to some other place. And so it really just depends. You can certainly, through practice, you can accept pain. I mean, the more you have of it, the more you become capable of, doing something with it, because you are forced to, because you have to move on with your life, so you find some tricks to make it possible for you to walk on the broken glass, so to speak. You find ways to deal with the discomfort, the distraction of the discomfort. I don't know whether it really goes away as much as you find a way to acclimate to it, a way to work around it, like some other impediment, like having one leg. You find a way to make life work, even though you don't have two legs. So anyway, so I think it's really important to understand that part of it. And then the second part of his conversation I don't like is he's basically explaining or justifying or defending rationalizations. Let's just fool the brain. Let's just pervert the reasoning capacity of it and pretend that we'll just make it do what we want it to do to suit a circumstance. And if the circumstance is acceptance of a circumstance that exists, then we just accept it. And I think there's way too much of that in the world, and that's what's wrong with the world, is people are constantly rationalizing the crap away. They're constantly making excuses, essentially, for their alcoholism. It's like we are drunks on the highway, and we kill a family of four, and we come up with a rationalization, and we say, well, my wife made me do it, or somebody else drove me to drink, and therefore it's not my fault, and I don't have to take responsibility. And then we can also just minimize the people we've killed. We could come up with a thought process that just said, well, they were going to be assholes anyway. They were going to vote Republican. They'll come up with some way to make it not what it was. Alright, well anyway, so, we see it happen to ourselves in the way we maturate or move through life. I mean, when you're a kid, all you have to do is hear somebody died, and you're all like hysterical because somebody died. Oh my God, they're dead. So you automatically, it's just conditioned into you to react with some sort of emotion, some sort of crying or some sort of something. But it may not be very sincere. It's, how kids cry over anything, and it's sort of that kind of impulse. And then we all do it later in life, where it really depends on the context. If somebody says somebody dies, well, we'll say, we have a rational equation, and we can just sit there and say, well, yeah, well, they're 85 years old, they lived a long life, blah, blah, blah. Not a big deal. Or they died quickly. I mean, that's a good one. If you die quickly, yeah, well, death ain't so bad then. There's not too much to feel bad about. But if you have to witness it, then it's a whole different game, because then you have those images stuck in your head. And those are really hard to rationalize away. I mean, if you have images of somebody in pain, that's tough. And if you have images of, like, somebody getting decapitated, or some sloppy way to die, some way that just seems ungraceful or undignified to the person that you care about, like a disgrace to them, you're going to have a hard time just wiping that away, rationalizing, come up with some sort of bullshit story to make it go away. But if you really try, you could do it. But in a sense, you're not going to want to do it, because you're going to want to cherish that thing called dignity, or that thing. There are things that matter to us emotionally that probably do have value. I mean, even though our perceptions of our definitions of beauty might be entirely conditioned and entirely just a personal contrivance, it's still ours, and it still means something to us, and it's what gives our life meaning. It's what defines what means something to us. And I'm not saying there's not a reason to say to yourself or to rationalize that away if that's your choice, but it's almost like rationalizing away sexual desire. You could probably do it, but why would you want to? Why would you want to take from yourself something that's so much a part of what living is? So in a way, it's that part of the monkery, that part of being a monk or being a brain controller or Mr. Spock, is the part you could say, well, why bother? I mean, why would I want to be that? I mean, if I'm not going to be addicted, if I'm not going to be full of that passion, then why exist at all? I mean, being a zombie is a waste of time, a real waste of time. So I argue for something in between there. I mean, I think we still have to be what we are naturally. You stick your hand in a fire, you're going to feel it, and if you waste 10 years of your life trying not to feel it, you're an idiot. Okay, you've wasted your time. We have to deal with the fact that we have basic sensations that are going to be powerful. But it is powerful. It is good to understand some of the basic dynamics of psychology, and it's good to understand a thing called mood. And that when you don't feel well, jokes aren't going to be as funny, and beauty isn't going to be as pretty, and a lot of things are going to change because of that mood. And and then we have some control over some of that stuff. Like I said, we can't do too much about native feelings. I mean, they're powerful, potent things. The reptile brain and the ape brain are powerful brains. And there's only so much we can do to rationalize them into obedience. But that's what we're basically doing. I mean, all this is stuff that's going from the top down. I mean, that's what our thinking consciousness thing can only influence top down. It can't really get to the root. It can just create subtle changes that'll trickle through the hardware.
The idea of controlling it all is preposterous at its roots, because the whole thing is ludicrous, and that's what I'm trying to get people to do, is to quit rationalizing away the ludicrous nature of life itself, this pursuit game. And certainly we should be able to become less addicted to some aspects of this foolish nonsense we're participating in. The whole idea of reproducing into another generation, well, that's a silly attachment. There's no need for that. The affection for our race or our kind or our way of life, as if it matters. I mean, being grandfathered out is not being eradicated. It's just accepting that the world might be better off without all this diversity, or some other equation. I mean, there's things we can rationalize out of ourselves that we don't have to impose on the world. We don't have to make the cost of our drunkenness mayhem. I mean, we can control how much damage we can do, and still fulfill our role as an addicted, psychotic feeding machine built by a dumb molecule. We can still play that game, but we can just, through rationalizing ourselves a better world to live in, a better frame of mind, we can control some of that. So anyway, I mean, it's a tendency of the human being. I guess what I'm really fighting against this. It's the tendency of the human being to want to create that happy mood. It's more fun to be happy than sad, and there's already, Nick's almost explained to people, well, here's one more piece of sadness you can get away with if you just rationalize it away. And I'm just trying to make the argument that people are already doing too much of that. They're already rationalizing away too much of the price of this thing called life on Earth. I mean, they rationalize away the suffering of animals. They just say, well, hell, it's not my problem. I didn't invent the system. Nature is what nature is. It's not my problem. I don't have to clean it up. I don't have to worry about it. So they just rationalize all that suffering away as if it doesn't exist. And so we already have too much of that, in my opinion, because all of this has to be accounted for. And I think we're looking at it soberly. If you look at life soberly, there's nothing there, okay? It's need created for no need. Need that the existence of a need that doesn't satisfy any need. And to perpetuate it mindlessly or without a great deal of serious thought is irresponsible, simply. So anyway, it's a big subject mood, but there is this interaction, but it is not as Nick explains it. All the instruments aren't the same. What parts of the brain are speaking a different language. It's just his metaphor is just too simplistic.